welcome in to the final episode of Just Basketball for August 2023. Not the final, we're going nowhere. It's like when Leo DiCaprio in Wolf of Wall Street's like screaming, that's me. And
okay.
We're not going anywhere.
I mean, the NBA season hasn't even started. It'd be a pretty disappointing run for us if we were over by the time our first full season began. So
It'd be tough.
Yes.
It'd be tough. All right.
Follow us everywhere.
Yeah.
If you're finding us for the first time, speaking of the season starting.
Yeah, podcast platform of choice, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever. Please subscribe on YouTube if you haven't already as well. Got some cool video content and news coming on that front. Janat's a new member of the team once we can officially announce that. Very excited about that. Want to tell you about our friends at Homage as well, an ultra-comfortable specialty apparel company. Brendan, pull up that shirt one more time.
The losing Las Vegas Aces who won the championship last year, and I'm celebrating them. Yeah. Homage, great license.
Yeah, NBA,
WNBA stuff.
Yes, I have a great Cleveland Rockers tee. They sent us some great. Brendan has a great Grand Canyon tee. They're all really soft, vintage-inspired designs that pay homage to the greatest stories, traditions, and figures across sports, music, and pop culture. Use the link in our show description to make your purchase and support the Just Basketball show. All right, we're going to do a WNBA focus show today. We're going to talk about Ben Simmons because he gave an interview. We're just going to really just dive into Ben Simmons and if there's any hope. We're going to, as the next couple of weeks, we're still like a month away from media days in the NBA, like 6 weeks away from preseason at this point. We still have a little bit of time. What we are going to do is, I think, every so often hit on some season preview topics, get ahead of it a little bit. Some of the things that maybe aren't the number one or like a top 20 necessarily storyline for next season, but hit some of these things along the edges. But Brendan, I want to ask you one thing first, just kind of off the cuff here. And I didn't want you to prep for this one specifically.
Okay, let's do it.
So, Austin Reeves, the videos that we saw like after this game, where then Anthony Edwards is like singing and like making fun of how the fans are reacting to him.
Yeah.
I'm assuming you saw this.
I did.
Okay. I figured Anthony Edwards like singing content.
I just added it to my file in my computer called Anthony Edwards Digital Shrine.
Yes.
It's just like a big package I have at this point, and I just scroll through it from time to time, fall a little bit more in love.
Yeah, when you need a little bit of joy in your life, that's it. Is this Austin Reeves, like the reaction he's getting? Is this a Laker thing, or is this like a look at this white boy from Arkansas who's good at basketball thing?
It depends on who the reaction is coming from. I think the reaction that he's gotten with this audience, in terms of the live fans at this World Cup, considering that it is in Asia, what I would attribute it to is Kobe Bryant. If we're being like very deep with it, Kobe is incredibly popular in China, as we were reminded when he passed, and the tributes and speaking of shrines that went up all around. So I think it's just that. It's just Austin Reeves plays for a franchise that has international global recognition, and therefore he's going to be more famous than maybe even his, in my opinion, very legitimate talent would indicate. But if you're talking about NBA fans, I do think there's a little bit of Lakers there as well, but I think that actually we're headed towards something where it reminds me a little bit of where Alex Caruso, the comparisons that were getting thrown around midway through last year, and Reeves had to nip them in the bud and say, like, we're different players. It just so happens we're both white dudes who came out of nowhere and broke through on the Lakers with this LeBron era. I think the other reason those guys are different is that Reeves is way better, in my opinion. I think that Austin Reeves is a legitimate offensive engine in a secondary capacity. I think what he did last year is real. I think he will be the third best player on the Lakers, bar none. Like, there's no one else I think is even going to be close this season, and he's going to be one of the best contracts in the NBA by like tomorrow, if he's not, if we don't already feel that already.
Yes. Nothing to add there. Just want to throw that out there. Want to hit one other FIBA thing.
I mean, let me ask you this though. Like, yeah. I do think that there is almost like this backlash to the backlash with Reeves already, where it's like, come on. Like, I've heard hosting a Suns podcast. A lot of the people I bring on who are fans of Phoenix or other Western Conference teams want to tamp down the Austin Reeves stuff like it was an aberration last year. Where are you on the spectrum of aberration to super legit?
I would lean way more super legit. I think this is just like a good player. Like this is just an actual good basketball player that like I don't think he's going to be on the Olympic team in a year, but he deserves to be like on this World Cup team that's more a mix of up and comers and guys finding their footing in the league a little bit, right? Like I don't think it's crazy that he ended up on this team somehow. It's we were texting about I don't want to. Jake's not with us anymore in terms of production. He's still alive, but I don't want to get.
I was gonna say, whoa.
I don't want to get hit with the. I can't get hit with the bell anymore, but. There's a certain player on the team I cover primarily that like may or may not like could in theory be like in conversation for another national team, and I think it's funny that Reeves has kind of made it over certain guys that have like a better pedigree than him per se, because like this is an undrafted guy who's a little bit older, all that stuff, but he's just like a good player. And I texted you. Like, I can't figure out, like, it still baffles me. I understand maybe you responded that free and is maybe broken, and I think that's probably the answer. And congrats to Dylan Heiser for being on his team, being able to capitalize on this. But, like, it's nuts to me that he, like, didn't get, like, he deserved to get the maximum amount of money that he got, and if only from, like, he showed enough for another team to try to screw with LeBron and Genie Bus, and then no team did that, and he now makes less per year than Rui Hachimura, and will hit free agency, I think, at, like, either the same year or, like, a year later, depending on options and things, than Rui Hachimura.
He's making, like, the same amount of money as PJ Tucker.
Like, what are we doing? What are we doing?
It's crazy. I mean, I just don't see a way you could say that what he's doing isn't legit. He's been in the league 2 years now, 60+% true shooting both seasons. At worst, you would say he's an average defender. I think in a context where he's not having to guard like John Morant and Jamal Murray, and they maybe have an upgrade to be made on that at that position. Maybe that's even just Gabe Vincent. This year, like he might even look a little better defensively. I just don't know how you can really poke holes in it outside of just, nobody likes to praise the Lakers, but yeah, definitely deserves to be on this team. And I think, like I said, he's going to be the third best player on a real championship contender. And there's not a lot of people you could say that about.
The last thing I want to say about FIBA before we move on is I think maybe the coolest moment of the tournament so far, I would say I actually think definitively it is the coolest moment of the tournament. The scenes of Japan beating Finland and how much this meant. Their 5'7" guard hitting a clutch three over Lauri Markkanen, who's 7 feet tall. Yuta Watanabe playing like a G League guy in the team, like an American-born guy playing for that team. There's just a lot.
Did you just call him a G Leaguer?
No.
My eighth man?
No,
you're saying a different player.
Yeah.
Okay. I was about to get his name out of your mouth like that.
Brendan, here's something you may not know about me, and if it's my fault if you don't. Part of the reason I'm like really bullish on the Phoenix Suns is because I absolutely love Yuta Watanabe. I've been a fan since before like he figured out how to shoot threes, which obviously has made a big deal. But I'm still like, yeah, I kind of like what this guy's doing. But like Japan winning with no Rui and beating a European team, not like a power, but like a team with Lauri Markkanen on it and some other good guys. This is what we want to see.
Yeah, on their home court, very big. Mm-hmm. It was cool. It was, you mentioned Yuta, and he, I think, had made no mistake about the fact. I think he said outright that if they keep losing in these high-profile games in such a ugly fashion, that he was just going to quit the team. Like, he's threatening to leave on top of, the pressure already on them with the setting being their literal country. So, all those stakes and everything made it a cool moment. They're probably still building towards something. It feels like none of those Asian countries have been able to be consistently great on the national stage, but maybe it'll be them. You never know. I think Rui playing in the Olympics next year with this group, like that would be a step, and he's young.
Do it. All right, let's talk about Ben Simmons. Ben Simmons gives an interview to Mark Spears at Anscaped. He is... The SEO is he's locked in. He says he's locked in for a comeback from injury.
I don't think anybody knows what SEO is.
Search engine optimization. I hopefully have one listener.
The short title that you see on the little tab bar. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. That's true. I should have thought better. But
can I? We're gonna break down if he can make good on the claims that he put forth. I think in as serious a way as we can do here. There's a lot of ridiculousness about Ben Simmons that is very well documented. We've had fun at his expense on this show because it has just been an insane 2 years for a lot of different reasons. To take some of the load off of him when it comes to this interview and get one silly thing out of the way before we try to break his basketball game down, what is the question posed by Mark Spears about why, after KD and Kyrie asked out, that Ben Simmons did not also ask for a trade? What was the goal with that question? What would have happened? What would it, like, Ben Simmons not getting traded? That is the most, like, just putting him in such a bad spot, such like a misunderstanding of every context going on with the Brooklyn Nets and Ben Simmons' career.
Yeah,
that
not
Ben
even
Simmons walking into Sean Mark's office would have gone well at all.
Yeah, that's not a Nets thing. That's a Ben Simmons has no ground to ask for a trade. Like it was hard for him for ask one in Philly with where things ended up. And like I don't know what that trade for him looks like unless James Harden also at the same time, like unless like all of that just kind of breaks in a certain way, right? It got really complicated, and
depending on what you believe, that could have been Tyrese Halliburton. So actually, history, the sliding doors moment there actually could have gone a lot better for them, but no, it got ugly for sure.
Yeah, so like I just look, there are a few number of players in this league that can actually go to a general manager, a president of basketball operations, a head coach and owner, look their locker room in the face, I would assume, and be like, yeah, I want to trade. And it not just be something that gets like scoffed at. Like you will
also, as if Ben Simmons hasn't been clowned online enough, Mark Spears is assuming he wants to dig himself a deeper hole by asking for another trade out of a city that he barely did anything for. Like, come on, Mark.
It was just a weird question, weird phrasing. He asked, the next question was, what do you love about Brooklyn? He could have just asked, like, how do you like playing in Brooklyn? Like, what has it been like living there or wherever he lives in New York? Like, what has it been like living there after being in Philly and all that stuff? Brendan, here's where I'm at with Ben Simmons. I don't feel like we know exactly what he is anymore. And I think that makes any projections of him incredibly difficult. Where are you at on this?
Why can't he just be exactly what he was in Philly by the end? Which by the end was much different than in the middle. But let's just say he is what he was in the second round against Atlanta, the last games he played as a Sixer, where he's incredibly hesitant to shoot the ball, to absorb contact in any way, shape, or form, but is still a really valuable wing defender, versatile, switchable guy who can really juice your transition offense and create great shots for teammates. Can he not be that?
I guess it's just like, is Brooklyn even like the right place for that? What is the right place for that? Right? Like,
in what way? Basketball wise or vibe wise?
Basketball purely. I don't want to get into vibes. I don't think anyone can really speak to what Ben Simmons' actual vibe is.
I think basketball wise, it's pretty perfect for him. And I mean, I guess Nick Claxton is somewhat of a less than perfect fit, but I mean, for the same reason we thought this was a pretty nice Kevin Durant team, it's also a pretty nice Ben Simmons team. They have wings galore, shooters galore, and honestly, what they're kind of lacking in is ball handling. So if you're telling me like Spencer Dinwiddie doesn't have to do everything in terms of dribbling and passing anymore, and they can put, him, Dinwiddie, McHale, Cam, and Claxton out there, like, and you're getting that 2021 Ben Simmons again, it seems pretty maybe. I mean, that's better than Philadelphia for him, right? That's better than Embiid mucking things up and Tobias not wanting to shoot threes and whatever else was going on by the end there, in my opinion.
Yes. I think that's right. I think it's like for Brooklyn, I guess this would be different if Brooklyn had like a 21-year-old blue chip guy to really cater to. Right now, that's just not the situation that franchise is in, and maybe that works in Ben's favor. It's like they have Mikal Bridges, who had an amazing upswing in what he was and what he showed he was capable of. Maybe Brendan, you as his biggest fan, maybe thought he always could do that, but like he really showed the world something different once he got to Brooklyn after
for 1/3 of a season and not the playoffs.
Yes, sure, but like
so there is. I think actually to your point with Mikal, they probably want to let him mess around and experiment a little more.
But it's not like they have him and like Cade Cunningham or him and Jalen Green. It's not like he's in Houston and there's like a bunch of bodies. It's like you look at this roster, it's like
Cam Thomas, you're forgetting. I mean, future All-Star.
Is on a world is okay, but it's like Dinwiddie and Royce O'Neal and Lonnie Walker the 4. Like it's Dennis Smith. It's there's no one aside from McHale on this team that you're really just like, okay, we actually really need to let Ben, like it's detrimental to this person to let Ben try to figure himself out. Like the Nets are not a title contender this year. They owe Ben Simmons a lot of money for the next several years. Like it is, whether for trade value or whether just to figure out if you can like play him. Like it is only 2 more years, so it's not like we're looking at like 5 years here. It's 2 more seasons for 37.8 and then 40.3. Like, so it's not like, it's still a lot of money, but it's not like the craziest contract at this point.
Yeah.
But like there's not like, if there is a world, to your point, where like he can get him a lot, like if there's a situation where he could play himself out, it is probably not a bad one for a coach in Jacques Vaughn, who seems to be getting rave reviews from his players. B, in a situation where there's no real expectation to win a ton of games, just to like have a good culture right now, as a kind of still like a post KD Kyrie reset. And C, in a situation where like there's one other kind of lead ball handler guy who absolutely is going to just deserves at his age and what he is and what he could be to surge in a certain way. Like, again, there's no Cade Cunningham here. There's no Jalen Green here. There's no Scoot Henderson that just got drafted coming in here. Like, it's all things considered not a bad spot for Simmons if they're going to let him play. The question is, I just think it's curious to see, like, how, like, are we going to know early with this? Are we going to, like, is he just going to go from the rip? Like, how does that look is really my big question here.
Yeah, there's a couple things I think that'll decide that. One is it seemed like Jacques Vaughn was pretty frustrated by the whole thing last year, right?
Which doesn't surprise me, and I think that's very fair. If you're a head coach, you want certainty, you want dependability, you want, especially if you're him who's trying to like build something amid a lot of chaos.
Yeah.
Like, I get it.
Absolutely. And so does that get better? What position does he see Ben Simmons playing on this team? You know, he made the decision before Ben got shut down with the back thing that Simmons was just going to basically be like a backup center, and then he wasn't even good enough at that. And I think if I remember the trajectory of everything correctly, he was getting DNPs, like coach's decision, before even the back stuff really started to flare up. But you look at the numbers and, you know, his at-rim frequency went down a little bit last year, but still for a, you know, theoretically a guard was pretty high. And then his finishing actually went up, you know, obviously not as high a volume because he just didn't play very much, but finished 69% at the basket. And, you know, those are the shots you want him taking. He, you know, is fallen off a lot in terms of how much he gets shooting fouls drawn and things like that. But again, if he's not a premier and focal point of your team, and he can just be a wing defender, ball handler type of guy, I don't think he's unplayable. I don't think he's terrible. But, you know, it's going to be incredibly difficult for him to ever reach the point that he was at, because you just can't play basketball so timidly and expect to do much. The other part of this, though, from my standpoint, that's interesting is a lot of the stuff he says around his injury, I think it is reasonable to question the timeline and the seriousness that he's kind of talking about here. Like, he gets asked in this interview, what were the hardest parts of your career? And one of the things he lists off is the time that he got traded when he was hurt. Didn't he want to be traded? Like, that confused me. He talks about some of the severity of this back thing. You know, he says that it got intensified as he was trying to come back by walking up the stairs, you know, and if it's truly that significant and he's being like fully honest about how it affected him. Like, I don't know why you would think a dude as big as him, who does have a history of other types of injuries, is going to be healthy like ever again. I mean, we're having the same conversation about Lonzo Ball. I know it's more significant, but a dude who can't like walk up and down stairs or get up from bed without feeling significant pain, that doesn't sound like a guy who's going to be reaching anything close to the heights we're talking about, even if it is just like the reduced version we saw at the end of the Philly time. Like, that seems super serious, but he's talking about it somewhat casually. That's what was weird to me.
Yeah, I mean, I think everything with Ben, the whole thing, just how he's kind of talked about it, it has always just felt like a little weird to me. And like, that's not really the point of, I think, what we're hitting on here, but this whole thing has just felt like, I feel like we are just like missing information on like from like so many angles of this. And if one day there's like a Ben Simmons like 30 for 30 and it's like we learn a bunch of stuff, like I wouldn't be surprised. You know? I mean, like I'm sure like like there's stuff with Clutch, there's stuff with the Sixers, there's just like so many angles of this where it's I don't feel like we know actually everything. There's just like information missing. There's information.
That's the other part of when he speaks publicly like this is there's now this increased layer of legalese that has to be like navigated by him, right? Because there was an actual lawsuit levied against the 76ers in order to get back pay for the money that they fined him for not showing up during his holdout. And so
like, for
he
a
can't
team,
like
for a
necessarily
team, yeah.
be honest about everything, but also the honesty would go a long way, I think, to help his fans and the fans of the teams that he's played for, like, understand the situation. So it is super bizarre, but I mean, the stakes are super high. If this guy doesn't get his act together, I'm not sure if he's in the NBA after this contract.
I'm not sure. I mean, I think there's a world where like if it doesn't go well, he's maybe not. He's like done after the season in some way.
Yeah,
I think it's
if they bottom out, you know,
or like middle of the season, like doesn't work. It's just like go home. We're there. We're staring down the abyss with Ben Simmons, and it's more unfortunate. I think if you don't have empathy for him in some way and how sad this is gone, like I understand you can feel a certain way as a fan, whatever. I think there's a big part of that's just it's sad more than anything else. All right, let's move on to Liberty Aces. Number one thing that I guess did change here is the market as far as the title odds from our friends at BetMGM have shifted. The Liberty
Not
are
much.
down, but like plus 155 is another knock off that. Like it was like plus 200, I believe. So it's like it has shrunk to closer, and the betting markets are saying, hey, there's two teams we really think could win this. The Aces are still minus 160. Again, some of that is
Doesn't it just feel like the Aces should be like plus 100 though? That's the side of it that I keep being surprised by.
Yes.
The Liberty are getting closer to even, but the Aces are staying pretty big minus favorites to win it all, even though they keep like yes, the Liberty are winning, but the other side of that is the Aces lose. Like it's not a one-sided outcome of these games.
This is like a UFC title fight where it should be both sides are minus 110.
Sure, yeah. Either way, I'm thinking of it like they should both be plus, but both being minus makes sense too. But
I don't know the gambling verbalese like exactly like that. I'm not trying to sit here and tell you exactly what this should look like. What I'm saying is I think they should just be even, and these are by far the best two teams. It's that close.
Yep.
So let me ask you this.
Yeah.
No, I just want to ask you.
Go ahead.
We just see this game. The Liberty win. The Aces do make a little bit of a push late. But it's like still kind of like Jonquel Jones is in foul trouble. Kelsey Plum fouls out of this game. Like Sid Colson's out here hitting threes. Like Stewie isn't particularly good offensively for much of this game. I guess Stephanie Dolson like came in and like she did some important things. I guess is one of the things where it's like, oh, she's going to be useful if these teams do end up playing in the finals. I guess when I ask you, did we learn anything new from this matchup between these two teams?
I think in a macro sense, no, because this was the fifth matchup between these teams. But I would say it reinforced what to me is actually like somewhat of a simple takeaway, simple analysis here, which is the advantages that the Liberty have over this Aces team, especially with Candace Parker out, aren't going anywhere. And if anything, with people like, Jonquel Jones developing over the course of the season, Stephanie Dolson coming back, different players getting confidence against this team, like they might have even intensified. And at the end of the day, the Aces, where they are without Candace Parker, without Raquana Williams, who never played for this team this year, they are in a situation where they look very human on defense, as they did for a lot of last year's regular season, but their offensive ceiling has taken a significant enough hit as a result of those two absences that it's not good enough to make up for that poor defense. And so they just look incredibly beatable, and they have now gotten beat by the other co-favorite, as we're thinking of them as, the New York Liberty, that it would be an even matchup if these teams faced off in the finals. If not, depending on, I guess, home court advantage will depend to decide some of that. But to me, the Liberty have more than proven that they have the advantage in this matchup.
I pick them a little bit out of just like kind of just like fandom and trying to be kind of contrarian, I guess I would say. In us talking about this, right? Like I think like that was definitely part of the bit I was putting forth in talking about this. But this team like can do kind of anything it needs to against the Aces, and we've seen them. Like they don't look. If the first game they looked uncomfortable, and they have lost to them since, I don't think like they've looked uncomfortable since that first game. Like they used that first game was almost like a data download. In retrospect, that first game was like they downloaded what they needed to, and they've adjusted. And Sabrina Ionescu is also just like is an absolute gamer. It feels like she's showing up a couple times in these really big moments where Stewie is getting physically kind of whacked and like really taken out of her spots a little bit at times. And Sabrina's like, okay, bet I'm just gonna like go nuclear, and it's just like I'm gonna outplay Kelsey Plum in a bunch of these games. It's like, oh, they can absolutely do this. And at this point, I would be surprised. I would kind of be surprised at this point, Brendan, if this series isn't like A, super close, and B, like if it's like not a Liberty sneaking out in 5, even if that means having to win on the road.
What if I asked you what the biggest advantage that the Liberty have is, now that we've seen this so many times, what would you say? What would you pick as like the number one thing that they kind of have over Vegas?
I think it is the different looks they can throw at A'ja Wilson. I think that's where this starts. I think with Breanna Stewart being able to defend the way she can, and her being able to handle that assignment for stretches and provide length. And like, yes, she's not as strong as A'ja, but she doesn't really get beat off her spot in a way other people do. I think that is massive. That's a massive advantage because it allows them to play these very different lineups and really stretch things out on the offensive end. And then when it's not Stewie, it's Jonquel Jones, who after a slow start with this team has really found a groove and has given like amazing defensive minutes against A'ja Wilson in the post, which very few people can do. A'ja Wilson most of the time, as we saw her just do when she scores 53, just kind of wrecks people inside with footwork and strength and everything about her game. That doesn't happen against the Liberty, in part mostly because those two players give her these different looks that really throw wrinkles at her that I don't think any other team can.
Yeah, I think to me, and it's a spin-off of what you're saying, but it's just size. It's just size at every position. It is the ability to play big without size. I mean, the advantage Liberty have against mostly anybody, but the advantage to play big without it feeling old-fashioned, right? I mean, that's where basketball is going. Maybe the WNBA doesn't have quite as many teams that can get there, but the NBA's been there. You know, the ability to have bigs who play like guards and wings is the ultimate cheat code of basketball, and the Liberty have two of those, and so they're able to defend the interior, defend the paint without it feeling like they're selling out to do it or having to play these crazy uncomfortable lineups. They just roll out their normal rotation and they just have that advantage. And then you get to, Benijah Laney and Kayla Thornton and Stephanie Dolson and some of these role players who also are bigger than their matchups for Vegas, and it's just ugly. I think you would have said that Vegas's ability to play 5 out in their own right, control the pace, and just move the ball like they had was going to be enough to just still lift them higher. But without Candace Parker, that went away. Kia Stokes looks pretty unplayable a lot of the time, and they're just running out of players to put out there and make an impact. And I think, I'm getting to the point where we'll have a lot of playoff runway to go, but I'm not even positive it's like 5 close games. It might be even more in the Liberty's favor at this point for me, but
So one other question, then I'm going to put you on the spot and ask you just to make like a real updated prediction. At this point, I obviously am just locked in on the Liberty. At this point, I'm ready to order some merch. And our friend Chris, Brandon, are you aware that our friend of the program, director of partnerships at Den of Geek, Chris Longo, bought a Sabrina Ionescu jersey after I went to the Liberty game with him? Are you aware of this?
No, but I love it.
He brought us a Sabrina Ionescu jersey, and I really love that for him personally. He's very proud of it. We are currently trying to bully other people in a group text we are in into supporting the W more, and I will shame them if I have to, if I'm being honest.
Well, I think the playoffs are going to be great, partially because of a team we're going to talk about momentarily.
Yes. So
pushing these top two, but
yes.
Yeah.
So here's my question. I think one of the other advantages the Liberty have is that they have 2 legit just wild cards that can really just kind of shape games. One is Sabrina Ionescu, and the other is Marie Johannes. Mm-hmm. They have these 2 players who absolutely can get red hot and are not at all fearful of big moments and big shots and taking looks when they get them and pressing themselves when they feel like there's an opportunity there. I think compared to how the Aces have looked offensively in these last couple of games, not saying Kelsey Plum can't do this or Jackie Young can't do this, but I think that the chaos factor is absolutely in favor of the Liberty if these 2 teams get there. And I do think that's something that, yes, it can rise and fall a little bit, but I think it can help. I think it's a reason I like them in this matchup.
Yeah, and that's what Raquana Williams was for last year's Aces. She was just a ceiling-raising type of offensive player where if she doesn't play well, they can still win by 10. But if she does play really well, there's almost no shot at beating them. And I think that's pretty much what Johannes is for New York this year. I would say if you're just trying to make the case for Vegas and not be too bleak about it at this point, Chelsea Gray has not played great in most of these head-to-head matchups, but one of the reasons that the Aces went from decent favorite to what felt like an unbeatable force in last year's postseason is that she put together just one of the best shot-making performances of all time. And I don't exactly feel like the Liberty really have an answer for that. I mean, you could say Benijah Laney, and I think she's done a good job, but it's pretty easy to get if it's one defender on the court who can defend a certain player. It's pretty easy for Chelsea Gray to just get her out, set a quick screen, get the matchup she wants, and go to work. And I do think that's the one thing we haven't fully seen Vegas do is just go super simple. Go, LeBron, James Harden, Luka Doncic mode with some of their best scorers and just get the matchup, get the mismatch that they want and punish it. And I think both Asia, although it's a little harder for the reasons you mentioned, but especially Chelsea Gray, can just go God mode and make 50% from mid-range for a series. And that's kind of, I guess, Vegas's version of the Sabrina Johannes duo kind of upside play that the Liberty obviously have is Chelsea Gray just breaking every scheme you throw, because somebody who could just pull up from 15 feet and make everything that's not guardable.
All right. Right now, who's your pick to win it all?
I would have to go with the Liberty. And we've heard nothing about Candace Parker, so there's not really a silver lining or light at the end of the tunnel there for them.
Yes, I tend to agree. Okay, moving on to the Washington Mystics and the return of Elena Deladon. Brendon, she came back. They beat the Aces by 16, and I will say the Aces obviously are in this like to another point in their favor. Like they have been on this long East Coast road trip just at the White House. Like it had like this is like a slog. And like NBA, WNBA, college, like when you do go on these trips, sometimes like it can just like be exhausting to be out of your home comfort zone for a while, and particularly in the W, like I think that can be really grating on teams. So I want to like throw that in that as well a little bit. But she's back, and like if she's healthy is obviously the biggest question with this team every year. But they've got a lot of other players I believe back from injury as well. And if she's back and their offense can hit this high level, like this is a dangerous team and a team we should be paying attention to, I think.
Without a doubt. We talked when Sabrina Merchant from The Athletic was on with us the second time this year, about a month ago now, about, and I said, like, the Aces are just one of those teams that make you get a little bit poetic. And the peak of what the Mystics have been under Mike Thibault and now his son running the team, who was an assistant for a long time, and they play the same way now, is similar. And I wrote when Deladon won MVP in 2019, this line from my MVP write-up for Forbes: any healthy season for Deladon in concert with an imaginative, steadfast coach like Thibault puts her in the MVP conversation, and it puts them in the championship conversation. And if she's there, I still believe that. She's probably not going to be the type of player who can handle heavy minutes and physical series and reach that ceiling that she used to be able to hit, because she's had another round of significant injuries even since we wondered about it 4 years ago when I wrote that. And she probably won't be the level of defender that she was at her peak, which was never great, but maybe a little above average, especially as a help defender. I don't even know if she can get to that at this point. But to me, Washington, like, they're going to have a great game plan and out-execute you pretty much every night. And on top of that, their wing trio with Brittany Sykes, Natasha Cloud, and Ariel Atkins is about as good of a defensive two-way group that you could possibly ask for. And when you're talking about matching up with Vegas in specific, there's really no team equipped better than them in the whole league to guard the Aces trio of perimeter players, which is really that's their big advantage. I mean, Asia's fantastic, but they open up what Asia's able to do, and it's so rare to have three great players like that in any basketball team. The Washington Mystics don't have the offensive firepower, but they have those three wings who can lock those three down, and so I like them in that matchup specifically quite a bit. We can talk about the Liberty matchup, but that level of defensive upside plus Deladon plus a great coach and infrastructure, like, if they're all healthy, which they are now, that's a championship contender, whether we think of them that way from what we've seen in the regular season or not.
Plus 5,000 odds. Certainly it will be an uphill battle. So we'll see.
Yeah, I can't advocate for betting on them, because I bet on them to beat, I believe it was Seattle that they played last year in the playoffs, and it was not close. So lost some money on that.
Would we say tepid optimism is the way to go here?
I mean, what do you think? I went on a big soliloquy and read my own writing and was on a little bit of a roll there. But what do you want? What do you think about these guys?
I want to let you cook like Austin Reeves in Asia. I think tepid optimism is where I'm at, because Elena Deladon could get hurt tomorrow and I wouldn't be surprised. That's just the unfortunate reality of this. She could get hurt any day and this is over.
Okay. Setting injuries aside, because Asia Wilson could get hurt tomorrow.
Yeah, okay.
That's
the thing. This is likelier than any other injury we could consider. Like,
let's imagine a world in which the healthy Washington Mystics take on the, as they are currently looking, Las Vegas Aces. Thoughts?
I think the Aces
What does
win,
that matchup look like?
I think they lose it, because I think the talent of Aces and the wing talent and scoring talent probably just wins out ultimately. But I think this could be the third best team in the W at full strength. Like, I think they would probably be the team I would most like to see push one of these two teams at full strength. Like, Elena Deladon when healthy is the kind of scorer that Stewie can be. and like is, right? Like it is that level of offensive firepower that unlocks with her and what she brings to you. It's nothing you can replace otherwise. And they have, like, again, the coaching thing is right. The other talent on the team, I think, is pretty good. Like it's maybe not as overwhelming.
They're deeper than Vegas.
They're deeper than Vegas. They have more bodies, and when you add the scoring punch, like hello, like let's you can get after it and really make things work.
Yeah, it's all predicated on Deladon being, to be honest, like even better probably in terms of how much she would have to lift than even in 2019. And, she's 33 now. So there's no Emma Miesemann on this team like there was 4 years ago. Christy Tolliver is on this team, but looks unlikely to play this year the rest of the way and is already, she's 36 herself. Probably not a great bet that you want to count on her. So the offense is in an even worse place overall than it was when they won the championship. But if you're talking about one series or, a handful of games, the 3-point upside that they have plus Deladon, to me, combined with their defense, which at its best is probably the best in the league. I mean, I don't know. That's debatable. But yeah, to me, it's obviously, it feels like a little disrespectful to Connecticut, who's very far and away the 3 seed right now. But I just don't think that team has the offensive upside because they don't have a player like Deladon.
The other thing I would say that I think is at least beneficial for Washington is they also got Shakira Austin back this month from missing over a month. Not as impactful for their ceiling this year in terms of as getting Deladon back, obviously, but you get her back. She's her minutes have ramped up as she's come back. She played 13 in her first game back, then 15, then 19, then played 21 in the win over Vegas. As we're recording this, they're playing in Minnesota right now. I haven't looked at the box score of that game. I'll be checking it out after we wrap.
They're up 5 at halftime.
Yeah. And then I'll see what her Minnesota is, I guess, too. But when you look ahead to, like, maybe building on, like, for me, if I'm them, if I can make some noise in the playoffs, Atlanta stays healthy, Shakira Austin gets some really good playoff experience, and you can make some moves in the summer to round out this roster and support those two, I feel like that's the way forward here. It's not so much like can they, like, rattle the top of the league here and pull an upset. I think they could. I don't think it's super likely, but can you set the stage for what's to come a little bit? All right, let's get on to some other final stretch topics here, Brendan. First one, Brandon Stewart MVP is something I just have like kind of assumed was going to happen, and then you throw this thing in from DraftKings, Asia Wilson -110, Brandon Stewart +110.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't really get that.
I don't either. I think Asia's been great this year, but like I think Stewie's been the best player in the league and is the best player in the league.
Yeah, it's it just feels
like best player in the best teamy,
I guess. But I also just think part of why before we even saw the Aces lose the way that they have to the Liberty, which we just got done talking about, I had assumed that there would be another component of it that would just be the cannibalizing of the votes, which we see happen on a lot of great kind of super-ish teams. Steph and KD didn't win MVP while they were both in Golden State, right? Like, that happens, and I thought that would happen with the Aces, but for some reason it hasn't fully happened. Positive Residual, who did some work with The Ringer and does a lot of great NBA and WNBA stat stuff. He's one of the only people that compiles like an actual one stat fits all type of thing for the W, because Basketball Reference does not have box plus minus for this league yet. Stewie is 6th for him. I'm assuming it's a him, I believe, on this dashboard. And that's behind all 4 of the Aces' best players. Jackie Young is actually at the top of this list, and it's like estimated contribution is the name of this stat. And Alyssa Thomas is 2nd, and Stewie is, like I said, 6th. So that would lead you to believe Alyssa Thomas should be the MVP. I don't think that's going to happen. She's plus 1,100. I don't think voters are going to give her the nod. This is humans voting. That's the other part to remember. But I was surprised to see that, and a lot of it is the defense. Stewie is a negative defender by this metric, whereas all the Aces players are in the positive.
I just don't really get that, if I'm being honest. Like I kind of just I feel like this is just like that's like getting too complicated for reasons I don't totally like understand. I get it. I get that we want to be qualitative, and I think that's useful. I think like a robust MVP data is good. You look at the big picture.
I'm not here saying DraftKings looked at this positive residual database.
No,
but I'm just saying that it's an interesting kind of counterpoint too.
Yeah, there's something to me with MVP where like I do have a little bit of like old school in my bones where I'm like, do I feel it? And like I feel it with like one player, and then there's a second place one, and it's Brandon Stewart 1, Asia Wilson 2, and I think that's like pretty definitive to me. And
I mean, Stewie has 59 true shooting percentage. She has a 27 usage. She only turns the ball over 7% of the time. She's upped her assist rate this year.
She's a ridiculous
up her block rate as well.
Yeah,
because she's in help more, and their perimeter defense isn't as good as what she had in Seattle and whatnot. Well, at times. So, yeah, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. I think if the Liberty could somehow get the 1 seed, that would obviously just unanimously clinch it. They're only 1 game back with basically, well, they have 5 left. The Aces have 4 left, so it very well could be that they get the 1 seed here. But I agree, it shouldn't be Asia first, and to me, it should be even more like minus 300 for Stewie. And I honestly think that Alyssa Thomas should be like it. This is a 3-person race. This is not a 2-person race. This feels like in the NBA this year when Giannis was like a distant third for some reason by the end of the year, when it should have been, kind of three people in the running. But narrative.
I will.
So obviously that's
look. I will just say, like, am I slightly biased because I got Brianna Stewart when she was plus 180 to win WNBA, and I bet that? Yes, I will admit a slight bit of bias. That was also that like. So,
well,
look, it was a measly
for your pocketbooks that happens.
Look, it was a $2 bet, Brendan. It was if I'm gonna 560. That's like a bagel and a coffee for you, boy. So, long term investing over here. I think Brandon Stewart ultimately wins it, but we will see. Okay, is there any chance, Brendan, that the Sun catch the Liberty and knock them down to 3? I'm gonna say what? Go ahead.
I have to edit this question. Like, we should just talk about if the Liberty can catch
the Aces.
The Aces. That's the bigger. They're 1 game apart. The Sun are 4 games back. I don't think that we're going to see that happen. And they've been on I don't think they're on necessarily a losing streak, but they have not been playing great of late. They lost to the Wings a couple times. Yeah. So
I'm gonna say yes. I know
that the Liberty catch the Aces.
I'm gonna say it's it's very possible. I'm trying to see. I think did the Aces have a game in hand? I believe. Oh no, the Liberty have a game in hand.
They played one more. Yeah, the Aces
so the Liberty
played one more game, but the Liberty have 1 more left. So yeah, the Aces have 3 home games against the Mystics, Storm, and Mercury, which is pretty nice.
Yep.
The Mystics one is pretty big. That'll be on Thursday. We'll see what that looks like. And then the only road game is also against Phoenix, who have already been boxed out of a playoff spot and have nothing to play for. So they're playing the 2 worst teams in the league 3 times, and then the Mystics. The Liberty have home against the Sun, at Chicago, at Dallas, home against the Sparks, home against the Mystics. Those are all going to be incredibly competitive games. So schedule-wise, you would lean Aces. They have the 1-game advantage, but obviously the game in hand, as you mentioned, for New York. Like, I guess really to me what it comes down to is how much the Liberty care about it. Do they want it? Are they going to really try to go 5-0 in these games and end the season on a 9-game winning streak? Or are they just going to let whatever happens and feel comfortable they can go into the Strip and win a game if they need to?
Here's what I would say. I don't think it, like from a will they make the final standpoint, I don't think it matters. But if I'm gaming this out, I think I would want to get one just to have like another little edge over the Aces to maybe like give yourself like the home court advantage. I think there is value in them going for it and like going for broke, especially because like you don't have to turn around and play right away. Right, like if you do this, it's not like an NBA situation, like exactly where you can, like, kind of back yourself in and it's okay because everyone kind of does it. This is like, okay, if you're the best teams, you get a little bit of a reprieve for yourself, and then you get a chance to like catch your breath and then get going. Like you have a real advantage in that way. So if I'm them, I would really go for it. I would be like, hey, you know what? Like we can secure a court advantage in a possible final series. We can really like it. Again, I don't think it matters too much to them who they would play. I guess theoretically, depending on how the schedule breaks, if this requires like a little too much game theory.
Yeah.
But like, do you end up in a situation where like the Mystics are on your side of the bracket and you don't want that when you could have just like not had that? Like,
that's the thing I was gonna say is they got kind of lucky that the Mystics got healthy now, because I would imagine there's not a good chance that Washington falls lower than 6.
Well, if they win this game we're talking about, they jump to 5th.
Yeah, it's very clustered, but I definitely don't think they're going to lose enough that Atlanta or LA would overtake them. So then you're in a situation where you don't have to worry about if you're the 2 seed playing the Mystics. I think the Dream and Sparks, like, you're going to feel good beating them probably in a best of 3 no matter what. So, yeah, I think what you're saying is true. Like, it'd be nice to try to avoid certain teams in the second round and all that, but like you're not going to
game it out. Like
okay, guys, we have a team meeting. We're going to lose this one and win that one in order to play this team in the second round. Like, that's unlikely. So yeah, I hear you. I think it's interesting. I don't think the Sun catch anybody. I think 1, 2, and 3 are 1, 2, and 3. Maybe the 2 jumps to 1, like we just said, and then really it's like kind of a free for all between 4 and 8, and it's going to go down to like the last game of the year next Sunday.
Yeah, I think they should go for it. I really do. I really think it would benefit them if they just put their foot on the...
It'd be pretty nice to go on a 9-game winning streak heading into the playoffs.
Yeah, and you have the benefit of beating the Aces in some high-profile games, including the Commissioner's Cup. You get the 1 seed. Like, you're gonna get to have home court the whole way. Mm-hmm. Pretty nice. Like if you get game like honestly, Brendan, as much as like we've talked about how good the Liberty are, if you tell me like the deciding factor is maybe they just got to be at home and the Aces aren't for Game 5, like sure, like honestly, like sure, tip it that way. I think that kind of stuff does matter. And again, you're not gearing up for a possible 7-game first round series. It's 3 games. Yes, there's some chaos built into that. Yes, but you're not like this isn't. I think like ultimately like we would like to see maybe the league expand, like the playoffs get longer, because part of what makes the NBA playoffs so great is that like there's this long battle of attrition in some ways. The WNBA getting there would be really cool ultimately with more teams and longer rounds. But it's 3, 5, and 5. You do not have to necessarily worry about your gas tank for another 2 months. Like you're kind of in sprint mode now to some degree, as much as you are still going to worry about conditioning and health and all of that. I do think like you have an opportunity here to really put your foot on the gas pedal in a way you might not if this was an NBA question.
So your other question here was best game. I would kind of
my answer is my answer has changed because it would be Liberty Mystics to end the season. That's the real answer. I believe I came up with this question before we knew Elena Delle Donne was coming back. My new answer would be Liberty Mystics the last day of the regular season.
And I think we have Mystics Aces on Thursday, which we just mentioned, so that's a big one too. I'll levy that into 2 games to watch and really a team to keep an eye on here. Tuesday night when we're recording this, the Sky play in Los Angeles, and then next Friday, September 8th, they play home against the Minnesota Lynx. Those 2 games will basically decide if Chicago makes the playoffs. And maybe that doesn't matter because it's a battle for the 8th seed and you don't expect much for a team that's been below 500 most of the year. But I think when you look at that team, I would want to play the Sky much less. Like they would worry me more in a pain in the ass way than either the Sparks or the Atlanta Dream, because what the Sky have with their 3 perimeter scorers and Kalia Copper, Courtney Williams, and Marina Mabry, you probably can beat them if you're Vegas or the Liberty, but that's a really tough assignment to keep those 3 in check, deal with a really heavy firepower offense. You probably aren't going to win back-to-back and sweep them. That series is probably going to 3. The WNBA playoffs are weird where you get in a panic because the first rounds are so short. Like, I would not want to deal with that. So, but from an entertainment standpoint, I don't care about who wins. So I want this guy in. I think they're a much more fun team than the Sparks are. And kind of want Caitlin Clark in LA a little bit too. So keeping an eye forward, looking on that, get them in the lottery, drop a great player back with the Sparks, get that franchise out of the problem. So anyway, long way of saying Sky this Wednesday, as well as next Friday. That'll determine if they make it, and if they do, they could be a lot of fun.
Can't disagree with anything there. I would prefer from a basketball team, but I agree to see to see Chicago win there. I think for them, I would want, how candidly they would answer this would be an open question, but it's like considering they had a coaching change this season and all this like weird stuff, I do just kind of would like, I would just be kind of curious to see like, hey, like, can we just like make the playoffs and be frisky? Is that enough to kind of like make us feel a little bit better about how the season's ended up? I think that's like a real open question to me. It's just like, is that like enough?
And not even just that, but it's like they had an ownership change. All their players left. Like, if you're still on the Chicago Sky, you're probably feeling pretty unwanted and kind of like hung out to dry. And Kalia Copper's a free agent this offseason. So
yeah,
how she feels about things to end this year matters for that reason as well.
Yes. All right. Any other final WNBA things, Brendan, that we should be looking out for, that you think we should be looking for this last little bit?
No, I mean, we mentioned it a little bit, but who doesn't make the playoffs becomes the lottery teams. The W counts last year's record and this year combined to seed the lottery, but nevertheless, those 4 teams are the ones who have a shot at this generational draft class. So hell of a consolation prize if you do not make it in, and we know that Phoenix and Seattle already didn't. So Caitlin Clark, Paige Becker's watch, Angel Reese watch is officially on, and then as soon as this whole thing wraps up, we actually get to watch those 3 players and more compete. So that's what's fun about the women's calendar, even though a lot of people don't want it that way. It's like it never ends. It's good stuff.
The last thing I will say is to go to the bottom of the league, I do just want to see the Indiana Fever continue to finish the season in a strong way. Like, they're still not good. 5-5 in their last 10, 1-3 in a row. Like Kelsey Mitchell,
hell of a win against Atlanta the other day. They came back from double digits down.
Kelsey Mitchell had 36 against Seattle in a win. She was named the Eastern Conference Player of the Week. Like, can they just finish the season strong, be in a good position with the draft, and like maybe next year we're talking about them as like fighting for the 7 or 8 seed, and like that would be a massive step up for like inarguably one of the worst franchises we have seen in the league for the last like decade.
Shouts to Herb Simon.
Yeah, it's not great, Bob. It's not great.
He's going to be saved by Tyrese Halliburton and Aaliyah Boston.
And
the good decision making of his own, just lucking into generational fun superstar marketable players.
Pick one of those other WNBA, like next wave of WNBA stars that's going to fall in his lap. Just pick one, and he's like going to be doing pretty well.
He's about to get another. You're right.
Just watch him end up with like Caitlin Clark. She might be like, "I'm out, bro. I'm going to stay in the Iowa."
NIL sounds real good.
I love Iowa City.
I love Gatorade's money or whatever she's getting.
The best one that Caitlin Clark has done that I think it's like a real connection to like the San Antonio Spurs in terms of grocery ads. She was doing, I think, HEB like games. Like she's doing like, guess what this product is that HEB sells. I think it was HEB, and she'd be like, it was just like a random like dry good. She's like, I think this is pasta, and it was like, oh yeah, it's actually macaroni, and it was like just this. I'm like, how much money are you getting for these Instagram videos, Caitlin Clark? Hopefully, like $10,000 a video.
A lot.
Hopefully, just like a crap ton of money. I would love that.
Caleb Williams money or Bryce Young money.
You're probably very familiar with Caleb Williams. You're an Arizona Cardinals fan. You, Brendon Kleen. All right, let's end there. I'm Chris Manning. That has been Brendon Kleen. Check out the final stretch of the WNBA season. It's really good basketball. That in FIBA is a great way to just dive into some hoops the next several weeks. WNBA playoffs are going to be awesome. the Liberty and the Aces on this collision course. Elena Del Don back. The Cassandra there. We didn't really even talk about the Wings in this episode, but like that team is still very much in the thick of it. There's a ton to dive into, ton to sink your teeth into. Even if you don't have a team you're rooting for, pick one for this playoff run. Have a good time with it. I think you'll have a good time. Enjoy the hoops. Thanks again to Dylan Heiser for production. Back at ya after the Labor Day weekend. Enjoy, folks.